Tonight, we travel back to medieval Europe, a place where one man was feared by every family, not because he was a criminal, but because his job was to carry out the king's justice. He earned more money than many workers, yet children ran away from him. Neighbors refused to eat with him, and even after death, many believed his soul would never find peace. So get comfortable, relax, and let's discover why nobody wanted to be a medieval executioner. Imagine waking before the first light of dawn. The village is completely silent. A cold wind drifts slowly through the empty streets. Somewhere far away, church bells begin to ring. Today someone has been sentenced by the king, and you are the man who must carry out the punishment, not because you are cruel, but because this is your job. But there is something strange. Nobody greets you. Nobody smiles. Parents quietly pull their children closer. Shopkeepers avoid looking into your eyes. It feels as though your very presence frightens everyone. Yet, without you, the king's law could never be enforced. For most people, morning was the beginning of another ordinary day. Bakers prepared fresh bread. Blacksmiths lit their furnaces. Farmers walked quietly toward their fields. But your morning was very different, because somewhere inside the castle, a prison cell was about to open, and before the sun reached its highest point, a life would come to an end. The executioner never decided who was guilty. He never chose the punishment. Those decisions belonged to judges and to the king. His duty was simple: to carry out the sentence, no matter how difficult or how heartbreaking it might be. Yet the townspeople blamed only one man, not the judge, not the king, but the man holding the axe. Fear often chooses the easiest target, and for centuries that target was the executioner. Imagine carrying this burden every single day, knowing that wherever you walked, people whispered your name. Children hid behind their parents, and strangers crossed the street just to avoid you. It wasn't the work that hurt the most. It was the silence, the loneliness that followed you everywhere. But here, there's something many people never realize. The executioner was often one of the most skilled men in the entire town. His work demanded precision, experience, and an understanding of the human body. A mistake could turn a public execution into a terrible. For that reason, many executioners spent years learning their craft. They practiced maintained their tools, and prepared carefully before every execution, because in medieval Europe, even this feared profession required skill, but becoming an executioner was rarely a choice. In many towns, the profession passed from father to son, not because the children dreamed of doing it, but because very few people were willing to take their place. It was a family legacy that almost nobody wanted. Imagine growing up knowing that before you even became an adult, your future had already been decided. No matter what dreams you might have had, the town would always see you as the executioner's child. Yet life had another strange twist. Despite being feared, many executioners earned a surprisingly stable income. Some received money, food, clothing, and even a place to live from local rulers, but wealth could never buy acceptance. No amount of silver could change the way people looked at him. Some burdens cannot be measured in coins, but perhaps the saddest part had nothing to do with executions. It happened after work, when the crowds disappeared. The town became quiet, and the executioner returned home alone to a life where almost nobody wanted to know him as a person. Some executioners married and raised families, but life was never easy. Their children often carried the same reputation, whether they deserved it or not. Society rarely forgot. Over time, the executioner became more than just a profession. He became a symbol, a reminder that every society must eventually face justice, even when it feels uncomfortable. And perhaps that is why history remembers the executioner not as a monster, but as a lonely man carrying one of the heaviest burdens in the medieval world, a burden few people, as the centuries slowly passed, the medieval world began to change. Kingdoms became stronger, laws became more organized, and public executions slowly became less common. The old executioner's axe, which had once symbolized fear, began to disappear into history. Today, we remember kings, knights, and great battles, but hidden behind every chapter were ordinary people living extraordinary lives, people history rarely talks about. And so, as night gently settles in, we leave the medieval executioner standing quietly somewhere between history and legend, a man feared by many, understood by few. His story reminds us that history is not only about kings or victories, it is also about the forgotten lives that quietly shaped the world. Thank you for joining me tonight. Rest well, and I'll see you in the next journey through history. Good night. Whatever choose